Hi, welcome to another weekly session. Today's session will be discussing about TF data pipelines and things revolving around TensorFlow. TensorFlow's built-in functionalities which are quite helpful and meaningful for your model training as well as deployment. TF.data pipeline is extensively used for designing the training data pipeline so that you once and for all describe and define how the training pipeline has to be, and if you have to make any changes, you will be making changes on a very superficial level so that you don't need to repeat the steps which you did before. But this comes at an expense. The expense is the complexity and understanding how the API works. Second thing which we might be discussing if time permits is understanding how the pruning and quantization of models happen. The pruning and quantization of models is needed for reducing the size of the model, and basically if you are not deploying your model on a server rather than you're deploying the model on a mobile device or on an edge device, then you need to understand pruning, quantization, and those kind of things, right? The next topic which we might be discussing is TF function, although there's nothing much to discuss in TF function, and the last one is TF distribute. This, believe me, I won't be discussing as this is nothing much. This all, so I don't have the technology for to discuss TF distributors. Like you have multiple GPUs, how if you have multiple GPUs or multiple or a TPU with multiple cores, so how you want to distribute the data and sync up with that. So you need not to do it manually. This is assisted with the help of TF distribute. But let's not jump into so many topics at once. Let's try to understand. Let's try to understand what is TF data. And TF data is quite interesting, and I think, and I am damn sure about it, that it would take the majority of the time. So let's first invest our time to understand what tf.data does, because I think you will be good with the coding part. Coding part is as simple as this. These many code lines. Where is it? So this is the coding part. More or less, this would evolve around it. And if you have gone through the code of my QuickML Python package, this is something you would definitely observe and find happening in the TF records making or those kind of things. But what exactly it is, so why does it help? We'll be discussing that and how you can utilize it in your TensorFlow data pipeline or those kind of things. So we'll be beginning with TensorFlow pipelines, and let us begin, right? So first we need to have an understanding of why do we need TensorFlow data pipeline. What is a data pipeline? These are, why is it a pipeline? Basically, what are sklearn pipelines and what is a TensorFlow data pipeline? Both are quite different. In TensorFlow, sklearn or those kind of things, you have a data pipeline which is in which you define, like first you need to deal with the missing values, then you deal with the anything. You might normalize or standardize the data, you might do this operation, you might do that operation, and a bunch of operations, and then you finally define that this is the model I would like to test out. So these are the steps you define. So what are the steps? Anything which is defined or predefined as a step and doesn't seem an experimental way. Usually Jupyter notebooks are quite experimental in nature. If you have any Jupyter notebook, it would be like a bunch of random code, another bunch of random code, goes with another bunch of random code, only comprehensible to the author of the notebook, right? Only comprehensible to the author of the notebook. Also, given the fact that if you reopen the notebook after a couple of months, let's say after a span of 3 months, 4 months, 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, it is definitely going to be incomprehensible. So what's the purpose of making something or doing something if you're not able to revisit it? Yes, you can do if it's just for an experimental basis or you won't be needing it in anytime soon. But what if you would be needing that thing again and again and again and again? So if that is the case, you would need to understand TF.data API. Another thing is that it does streamline your process. So you are able to you're able to define that the first step would be this, then the second step would be this, then you define that the third step would be this. That is one advantage for sure. The second advantage is the speed boost. The speed boost, as in your GPU is training and your CPU doesn't stay idle. So let me show if I have a good example. So this is what is happening. So your GPU is training, right? And once the training is done, then it gives the order to the CPU to fetch more data. For that time, GPU remains idle. So for the time GPU remains idle, you're wasting your training time. So what you can do is if I have sent the data to you to train or to inspect, I know that you would be demanding me the next batch. So why not I have it prepared before you asked me to deliver the next batch. So while the GPU is working on the first batch, nth batch, the CPU tries to prepare n plus 1th batch, and it supplies it to the GPU when and then required. So by doing this, GPU is only idle for the first batch, and for rest of the batches, both are actively involved, the CPU as well as CPU. This is the first and the major advantage. So we have discussed two advantages. First is streamlining the pipeline or the steps which you're going to follow to make the data processing happen. So what is the data processing? And the second advantage is idle time killing of the idle time, better time management. Now what is the data processing? So TF.data works on a very standard approach, which is ETL, extraction, transformation, and then loading. So first is getting the data, that is extraction. Then you might need to define few of the transformations so that the data is in the format which you would be needing. And finally is the loading, is to get the data on your drive so as to get the data on the RAM memory so that you are able to fetch and utilize it for model training. These are the three fundamental steps of any data pre-processing. Finally, let us begin with understanding what are the. So this image is quite popularly supplied by TF data. So no matter what kind of dataset you have, you might be having a TF record dataset, you might be having a CSV file, you might be having an UMP array, you might be having a text file, you might be having images. No matter what it is, you need to extract the data from the local disk. Then you need to perform some transformations and finally load the data on the RAM memory, which is then supplied to model. Now I had been working on this in the I think past month or 1.5 months before, and I had encountered some errors. So what happens usually if you do something wrong? So what happens is your memory loading shoots up, your memory shoots up because you might have done some step wrong, and that is something that you need to be a bit meticulous about. So this is something, this is the usually drawback with any data pipeline services. If you're able to implement it successfully, then your code is super clean, super neat, super fast, amazing. However, if you mess it up, it's gonna take up a lot of time for debugging. So if you are doing it right, as per the experimental results, it's 38 or 39 or 40 times more faster, at least 30 times faster for a simple numpy array and those kind of things, which is usually the industry practice, at least for the people who are in TensorFlow. So I personally like making TF records first, then going into the data processing. But what it does is it does not load the entire data on the RAM memory. It reads the part of the data, applies the transformation, then loads it on the RAM, fetches to the model in a very proper, synchronized, arranged manner. So what we might do is begin with before going to the official notebook, which is bit too code centric. What we can do is start with the notebooks, and once we are done with the blogs or those kind of write-ups, we can proceed to the code books and try to implement a little bit of code and try to train a model using tf.data. And if time permits, I think tf.data will take up the entire session, and if time permits, we will definitely cover this topic of quantization and pruning. TF dot function and distribute are nothing much worth of discussing. We can discuss it at this point as well. So let's discuss TF dot function at first, because it is quite independent of what we are about to discuss, TF dot function and TF distribute. So what is a TF function? It is basically compilation, helps in compilation for the callable TensorFlow graph. So by using TF function, you're actually shifting a part of the code from the eager mode execution. What is eager mode execution, graph mode execution? Don't get bewildered or confused or perplexed by these complex terms. Just try to focus on what they're trying to say. They're trying to say that eager execution is something which is quite Pythonic in nature. What is C++ versus Python is kind of static or graph mode execution versus eager mode execution. In Python, everything happens on the go. That is why it's a bit slow. In C++, you first compile the code and then you run the code. That is why the code running is faster. So that is what it is doing. TF function, you first just define the function and make it a compiled. You compile it beforehand. That is the reason, which is why we usually use TF function wherever we can, usually for data pre-processing on transformation steps. So these are the places which have used TF function. You can refer them. So better performance. So just define @TF function in top of a function and you will observe a speed boost as per the claim. And don't get into the technical details. Usually I've used it wherein I needed to improve the performance. Let's see the code examples wherein they have used. So this particular guide talks about better performance with TF function. So the official notebook, official guidelines, they talk about TF function, convolution function. They are usually speed boosts. I don't have this particular example. The one which I had worked on is the one wherein you are performing the image transformations. So let's say you are doing loading or those kind of things on the transformation of the images. So you have a bunch of code which describes how the data set has to be loaded. So you can add one thing, that is @TF function, and you just compile it beforehand. That's it, a speed boost. Usually a speed boost, and I think that's what you will be needing to know at this stage. So this was the training step which was there. Now you're defining a custom training step and you can do a TF static so that it becomes a static function. That is as simple as that. I think this is the use case you would be needing at max. Now let's discuss TF distribute first, and maybe we can also distribute quantization pruning and keep the data, TF data at the end, because it's the huge topic. And given the fact that it's a huge topic, you also need to understand it clearly, and you must understand it properly so that you won't. I personally landed into a few errors while experimenting out with TF data, and that's fine. I mean, if you are learning something new and you don't land up into any error, that would be absurd, given the fact that you might end up facing errors at the point you might not expect or want that to happen. It's better to expect errors and face errors while you're learning rather than having errors at the time of actual test or those kind of scenarios, right? Or where you have a time crunch, those kind of things. As you already know, weekly sessions are about to end. We have 1 month left. After that 1 month, we'll start with something like more organized in a better manner. And yep. TF distribute, what I understand of TF distribute is you have to describe a strategy That is a strategy which describes that these are the cores. Let's say you're using a TPU technology, then you define the distribute strategy. The strategy tries to discover the devices, all the devices, and then using the strategy, it is with strategy.scope is what you use. Strategy.scope. Under the scope, you define the model. And then whatever the data is supplied to that model, it gets automatically distributed and automatically synced up. This is the fundamental idea of TPUs or QuickML, or if it is a case of multiple GPUs. What is it? Define the strategy, call the strategy function, right? So you'll be calling this particular line TF distribute strategy. This is the strategy. You call the strategy. It then call the number of replicas in sync. Overhead is one. Let's say you're using two different GPUs, right? So if you have two different GPUs, it would show two. If you're using a TPU, then it would show 8 different cores. Now what is there is within the strategy scope, you define the model and compile the model. Now whatever you pass the data, no matter how it is, it will get automatically synced up and distributed and automatically synced up. Automatic distribution, automatically synced up, and then it goes for the training, updation, and all those kind of things. All right, and I think this is done. Export the safe model. This. Nothing much usually required when you're training on multiple GPUs. Like there are multiple GPUs are usually used if you're training something very heavy or high end. Then you need to understand multiple GPUs. All right, we are left with pruning, quantization. Let's discuss that as well. So what is what is pruning? The very name suggests pruning is basically cutting out the weights that might not be that relevant without a significant performance drop. So you have an entire structure, tree structure, or whatever structure, net structure out there. Within the net structure, you are trying to figure out which of the weights can be cut or removed so that the model's performance does not get affected. That is pruning. And what is quantization? It is basically trying to uh, train in a different floating points or those kind of things. Post training quantization, aware training, those kind of things. We have different things. So usually model size decreases without much difference in the performance. So we'll be discussing both the topics one by one. All right. So let's discuss pruning and quantization. Then we'll move on to TF data. So let us discuss pruning and quantization to greater extent. Both of them try to, the main aim of both the methods is to achieve a model with a smaller space size. So if a model is originally of 400 MBs or 200 MBs, we try to reduce it by 50% to 80%. That is the main target of pruning or weight quantization. Now if you're working with pruning, you will try to deal with the weights. If on the contrary, if you're dealing with quantization, you'll try to deal with the how the data is stored. So you'll be dealing with the precision, or better to say, will you need to store 32 bits or will you need to store 8 bits? I hope you understand the difference between 32 bits saving and 8 bits saving. So let's say you need to store the number value 100. For 8 bits, it would be 0000 and corresponding binary representation for 100. Whereas for 32-bit, you'll have to store a lot many zeros, which is a sheer waste of memory if all of your data is near about 100. So that is the idea of quantization, wherein you are aware of the kind of data or the kind of data which needs to be stored. then you will have to adjust. You basically try to adjust and shrink the entire maximum space to the one which your model is expected to have the data in. Why to have hundreds and thousands of bits for one particular cell value which would have a value of 100, 200, 300, right? So it's the case of pruning. Pruning is like you have a model. What is model? Model is a neural network. What is neural network? Interconnection of network, interconnected neurons. Now, few of the neurons would be heavily interconnected, whereas few of the neurons there might be something which are average connected, as well as there might be some of the neurons which will be partially connected. Now, if there are neurons which are partially or hardly connected and are not significantly contributing to the decision making, you can prune those weight. What is pruning? Cutting, right? You prune a tree. Pruning is extremely famous with the decision trees, extremely famous. So we use the term pruning the decision trees so as to avoid overfitting. So you can also prune a neural network to avoid overfitting. So let's start with pruning, then we'll move on to quantization. If time permits, we can discuss a code example. And once we are done with this, we'll move on to TF data. So this is what it is. Here we are. Magnitude based zeros out, this is this. So magnitude based weight pruning gradually zeros out model weights during the training process to achieve model sparsity. Sparse models are easier to compress. We can skip the zeros during the inference for latency improvements. So you can see with this table that a non-sparse model Inception v3 is reported to have a top 1 accuracy of 78.1, whereas a sparse model which was achieved with the help of pruning observed a drop in accuracy by 0.1%, whereas a model size compression of 50%. I think that is huge. If you are willing to go off a bit more by 2 points in accuracy, you will observe a 25% boost in the sparsity, and if you are willing to go off by 4%, near about 4 lesser than 4%, 3.5% in the accuracy, then you can have 87.5% sparsity, and that's a huge reduction in model size. Same goes with the language models, whereas BLEU is the standard or the ideal for the metrics. Now let's discuss some code, or let's first discuss the quantization. What exactly is quantization and why do we need to understand it? So there are two types of quantization methods. One is quantization after the model training, and the better version is quantization aware training. So if you are aware that this is the entire set of digits which you are able to store or will be able to store during the training, then your training would be adjusted in accordance with that, and it's a better training. So yeah, either you can quantize the model after training or you can do it before training. Ideally you should do before training. Now let's understand some metrics for this kind of similar metrics. So non-quantized and 8-bit, so it might have been 32-bit, float 32, float 64, whatever it is, but whatever it was, you have decreased it to 8-bit and minimal reduction in performance. Size reduction is not mentioned over here, but you can expect a huge size reduction. Now let's try to observe any code example if provided. So let's try to code this thing, and I think that would help us with better understanding of what the topic is trying to deliver. So we have TensorFlow model optimization as a separate package which assists us with these kind of operation: pip install, silent install, -q as the flag for silent install, TensorFlow model optimization. Now let's train a model which is without pruning, and let's see how it is. Some TensorFlow you don't import NumPy, you import Keras obviously. Model without pruning. So this is a simple model, simple workflow, most basic level of MNIST training. Load the datasets, get the datasets to begin training. As simple as that, nothing complex. Now let's see what exactly is in, this is the evaluation and saving model. Next we will have model with pruning. Now for a model with pruning, what we're gonna do is %% sparsity, 50% zeros in weights, and we will end up with 80% sparsity. So we'll start with low level sparsity and we'll try to increase the sparsity level by level. So let's start with low level sparsity. And what exactly do we mean by low level sparsity? Let's see. So you have prune low magnitude equals, first you need to import TensorFlow model optimizations. Yeah, so where were we? So I don't think we need to deal with this, as this is nothing uh, to worry about. So there are multiple types of pruning in TensorFlow optimization. We are using the prune low magnitude types. Now these are some model hyperparameters. This is something which you need for model pruning. What is it? A dictionary of parameters. So you say that pruning schedule would be equal to this kind of pruning. What is it? So let's search this. So I did this last year in the month of October, and quite interesting. So in TF model optimization, you have clustering, experimental quantization, and sparsity. So pruning is sparsity, quantization is a different library. Now in sparsity, you're using polynomial decay. You can use constant sparsity, you can use prunable layer, you can use either of these. So we are using prune low magnitude, and the schedule would be polynomial decay. What is it? Nothing much. All you need to do is define the initial sparsity, final sparsity, begin and end step. And the begin and end step is defined over here. What is the last end step? Number of images, something like those. Now let's begin with model pruning. Trust me, this is nothing to be understood. This is just get accustomed to it. There's no sense of me talking this thing with you. Absolutely no sense. You can just read and go to the internet, learn about it, and get back to me if you have any kind of problem, or you need any help with the understanding. So it is prune low magnitude. Send the model, send the parameters. That is model for pruning. You compile the model, then you obtain the model summary. Now this time we will be updating. Now let's train the model with new data, with the pruned factors. So when we start training with the pruned factors, let's see what it is. So this is another kind of pruning, strip pruning. It is more extensive kind of pruning, and so this one is interesting. Pruning and quantization combined. So you have TF light converter. So you're making a TF light model. Within TF light model, you're defining the optimizations as default optimization, and quantize and prune model is converter.convert. These are bunch of predefined steps which need to be followed. So I don't think there's much to discuss. Let's just copy and paste this and see whether or not model is running. We don't have model for export, so let's search what is model for export, the context behind it. So this is a utility function the writers have provided so as to zip the file, and very simple, zip a file and find the file size, as simple as that. Nothing complex in it. So baseline model was 78 MBs, something like that, and this is way lesser, I think 10% of what it is, right? This is the beauty of pruning and quantization. We are not going deep into it, just overview, just a brief overview of what it is. There's a lot to it, definitely there's a lot to it, and to experiment, and I'll leave that to you because we are running low on time. So my main focus of the session is TF data, and that too I doubt how much we'll be able to cover, but let's try. And let's try to deliver, let me try to deliver the essentials of TF data pipeline, and so that you can understand what exactly is TF data pipeline, right? So let's start. First we need a data set. So this seems a good data set. Plane, and this is what the data is. First we'll start with something which is bit basic and trivial. so that helps us to understand. This is a good theoretical introduction. So we have TF data. This is consuming the data. First step is extraction or consuming the data. Data can be anywhere and can consume a number of data formats in memory or from the local disk or from internet as well. If you come from a database or data warehousing background, you should be able to spot the pattern being used here. TF data is indeed an API built to build an ETL pipeline to feed the data to a TensorFlow model. If you're new to this concept, ETL process is simply the procedure of copying and transforming the this. So let's say you want to deal with CSV files. We are provided with TF data experimental CSV datasets. Shuffle is to arrange and randomize the data. Then you have repeat so as to enable the data to be repeated over so that you can iterate the data multiple times. These are flags which are provided. Models are trained over multiple epochs for the training. It's done with the repeat method. Batch helps us to create batches of the batch size you want to specify. So the data set would automatically be readily prepared into multiple batches. This is a code example in my understanding. So what we have done is taken the CSV data, record defaults, this. You can also either do row by staking, or what you can do is for row in the dataset dot take one, so it will only take one. Or if you want to limit it, you can say I want to iterate, but I don't want to iterate over 10. So you need not to have a counter over here. You need not to have a count variable so that count equal to 0, and if count is greater than equal to 10, then break. No need for that for this particular pipeline. For this particular API, tf.api, tf.data API, all you can do is dataset.take 10 samples, and once the 10 samples are done, it will automatically stop iteration. The notebook example had a good introductory aspect, but the working is extremely bad, so we'll close this, and we have justified our use for understanding the introductory example. Now let's move on to something better which has a working code example. Something better which has a working code example is difficult to find, especially when you are not having a data set in your hand. So let's follow the official code example only. I think nothing better than that. Usually there's a lot of aspects. There are multiple aspects. These are usually mastered once you are onto it and doing hand-on coding with these things, but I think that's the best way to learn anything. But never mind, let's get started. Hi, I personally find this example good, and I think we can read the example and close the matter. As TF data is inbuilt in itself a good topic to discuss. Maybe I can search few Kaggle notebooks if I find any. Let me search TF data pipeline. TF data. I think we saw this one, and I will share this particular notebook, Understanding TF Data Input Pipeline, wherein I'll have extensive detailed explanation of how and what to do in different use cases. Usually you need to modify how the data is being fetched. So let's understand this simple example, and that might help. So let's see what it is. TF data is there. GPU prevents the data from GPU starvation. Yes, this is something we discussed. So TF data with text example, you have this data, this data, this data, and iterations, transformers, make one shot iterator. What's really happening is that data set is a node of TensorFlow graph that contains instructions to read the file. We need to initialize the graph and evaluate this node in a session if we want to read it. While this may sound awfully complicated, this is quite opposite. Now, even the dataset object is a part of the graph, so you need not to worry about how to feed them data in a model. So let's first create an iterator object over the dataset, and then you can iterate over the dataset. There are multiple methods for iterating. So you have, let's say you have created a dataset, right? So let's say you have created a dataset. Assume that it is a dataset, TF dataset. So what you can do is for data in dataset, this will print out the entire dataset. Now if you want to print out only the first few elements, you can use take. Take can also be used for defining subsets. Let's say you want to make a training subset, so you can do training dataset as a train dataset dot take 0.9% 0.9% of the length of the dataset, right? And the testing dataset would be also this dataset dot take 0.1 times. Not exactly. So the test dataset would be equal to dataset minus the train dataset, something like that. I don't remember the exact operations, but that is best way to do it. Now you have mapping. Extensively used is mapping. So let's not get into the coding, right? Since I'm not able to find a good example, what we can do is use my recollection and use it the most part as a benefit. So let's say you have loaded the dataset, right? How to assume that loading a TF dataset? TF data loading images. So this one is a good example. Yeah. Now we have trained dataset, we'll have a validation dataset, we'll have class names. I don't want to visualize the dataset. Now let's standardize the data. And once we're done with the standardization, we can move forward. So this is a preliminary kind of data modification. tf.dataset.cache.prefetch. Prefetch helps in automatically dealing that, so that it removes the time lag of the GPU demand and the CPU generating the dataset. So CPU already has packets of dataset generated in the sequential order in which it expects the GPU to demand the data, right? Once it is done, already what we have here, let's see what train dataset offers to us. So is our dataset, batch dataset shapes are these, right? It's already in batch form. Now if you do train dataset.map lambda x and x be any random operation, let's say x into 100. So what happens is every value within it is multiplied by 100. Okay, so now every value x and y, obviously labels are also there. So every value in x is multiplied by 100. Now let's say I want to divide by 100. So this is the map function. Extremely used. Map is for transformations. Now let's say your function is not a one-liner. You're trying to apply data augmentations. What you want to do is define augmentations. Augmentations wherein you have your image, which is image, and a label, right? Now what you want to do is with multiply bunch of augmentation. Let's say aug1 equal to this, aug2 equal to this, aug3 equal to this, and return the image and label. Or let's say you are trying to generate multiple images out of it. So now you generated image 1 equal to this, image 2 equal to this, image 3 equals to this, and with the help of these multiple labels, now you want to expand your data set. So that is also something you can do. Definitely you can do. So these are one of the multiple uses which is there for mapping. What is this decode image? So what happens usually is it reads the paths, and once it reads the paths, you need to actually, those are file paths. So how do you get the image out of the file paths? You again need to define a function which is usually decode image or JPEG, whatever it is, depending upon the use case. Over here we have decode image. So it would take into argument the file path, which is image. Then it would try to read the image, which is tf.input-output.decode JPEG. Image, define the channels, whether or not it is a colored or a grayscale, and then return the image depending on the resizing factor or whatever you want to do transformation. So is the case with process the path. You want to get the path of the image, get the label of the image. These are multiple kinds of experiments which you're going to need to do, and this is all about TF dataset. Trust me, this is all about TF dataset. A brief detailed code notebook would be provided on my Kaggle account, and you can check it out, wherein I'll share how to exactly deal with TF data input pipeline. Extensively used, extensively needed, and extremely useful, given the fact that dealing with NumPy usually ends up with over blasting, or what you say is over consuming is the better word, over consuming your RAM memory. So you can increase RAM. Let's say you have 8 GB RAMs, you can increase it to 16 GB, you can increase this to 32 GB, but that's not the best way, right? The best way is pick a part of, rather that's the human way of doing things. Pick part of the thing, get it done, keep it aside, take the next chunk. And that is what TF data tries to implement. I hope today's session was helpful and useful. If so, please hit the like button, subscribe, and if you have any queries, please feel free to reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to help you out. Alright, take care. Bye-bye.